CBS News.
This is CBS.
Coming up on News Tab at 6, all afternoon, flames have spread across southwest Abilene near Dyess Air Force Base. Firefighters and neighborhood residents rallied to battle the flames that burned out of control. The flames, the heat, and the smoke got the better of firefighters at times.
And Bob will bring you live coverage from the scene as firefighters are beginning their cleanup. We'll have reports from a physician at the hospital about the emergencies that firefighters face this afternoon. John Thomas will talk to the fire chief about the personnel problems. All those stories and more coming up.
Summer's fun and sunny. This is the 50s combo. A big burger, a bunch of fries, medium soft drink, and this 50s combo is for $2.29. It's a good deal. Can't beat it. Summer's funner at Sonic. The 50s combo. It's the best. Sonic started in the 50s. That's why they call it the 50s combo. They've been around a long time, you know. The 50s combo.
Summer's funner at Sonic.
When it comes to fun, we Texans have always jumped in with both feet. And where in Texas can the whole family have more fun than any place else? Fiesta Texas in San Antonio. It's all here in an exciting new theme park that celebrates a heritage so big it could only come from Texas. There are more shows in a day than in a week on Broadway, thrilling rides, an exciting water park, and a fairy tale playland just for the little folks. So bring the entire family to the theme park where the spirit of Texas comes alive. Fiesta Texas.
All of these children have one thing in common. All of them were unplanned pregnancies. Pregnancies that could have ended in abortion. But their parents toughed it out, listened to their hearts, and discovered along the way that sometimes the best things in life aren't planned. Life. What a beautiful choice.
KTAB, keeping tab on Abilene and the Big Country. This is News Tab with Bob Bartlett, Diane Dobson, Bill Cheney, and David Bacon. News Tab is the most watched news team in Abilene and the Big Country.
Okay, secure this house up. You all get out, okay?
A battle going on in southwest Abilene. Police went door to door to move people away from the fighting area. Good evening. For the second day in a row, a major grass fire in southwest Abilene. This time, a group of homes near Texas Avenue was in the path of the flames. Smoke could be seen for miles. I saw it driving to work about 1. That was the first grass fire. A more serious one developed a little while later. Diane is standing by live at that scene. Diane?
Bob, a sign that things are beginning to be back to normal this evening. There are children riding their bicycles in the neighborhood here, and the ice cream truck just came by singing its tune. So things are beginning to return to normal. Firefighters are still watching, though, to make sure that the flames don't flare up again as they did earlier this afternoon. We're still fighting the ashes and the wind that are blowing out here. News Tab's Joel Fox has been out in the fire all afternoon, and he has a report for us. Joel?
Diane, another sign that things are getting back to normal is that this is an area where the action was. This was covered with smoke. Behind me here was where most of the flames were. This, of course, was the second fire, though. The first fire occurred just about 2.5 miles away from here, and that was what was so taxing on firefighters, the fact that there were 2 fires in a row this afternoon. 2 major grass fires within about a mile of each other kept Abilene firefighters busy and many Abilene residents concerned. At the 5200 block of Hartford Street, residents of Covington Point Apartments watched as the fire came uncomfortably close.
It gets a little scary having it this close to the buildings. I live right upstairs.
And one resident of nearby Spanish Village Apartments brought out the water hose just in case. But on the heels of that fire came word of another one off Texas Avenue along Southmore. Residents hosed down grass and fences along the alley as they watched fire and heavy smoke moving rapidly in their direction.
They told us to keep watering the weeds in the back fields and do that kind of stuff just to keep it wet so that it won't spread as much.
And as quickly as frustrated firefighters could put out one section, another hot spot would flare up.
The only thing between this grass fire and these houses was the fire trucks. This one was moving quick.
As thick smoke moved close to several houses, one police officer encouraged residents of about half a dozen homes to evacuate voluntarily. Firefighters from Dyess came in to assist after Abilene firefighters had worked straight through for about 2 hours. Except for 3 firefighters who received oxygen after being overcome by smoke, emergency medical technicians on the scene said they were aware of no other injuries. The blaze appeared to be under control by about 4 this afternoon, but firefighters remain at the scene prepared for further flare-ups. And as you can see behind me, firefighters are here now spraying hot spots. There is no flame at this point. Everything seems to be died down, but firefighters will be here probably for well into the evening to make sure that nothing flares up again. This was the hot spot. This was where the neighborhood residents were evacuated, and as you can see, everything is basically back to normal. Diane?
Joel. And Bob, for Abilene firefighters battling these flames, the flames were only a part of the fight this afternoon. News Tab medical reporter Lori Gordon has that report.
A combination of heat, smoke, and stress brought a number of firefighters to their knees.
I'm okay. I gotta get some air.
High winds circulated thick smoke very rapidly. And high temperatures compounded the problem.
I want y'all guys to get down as quick as you can. Get some O2 on you, okay? All right. You're out of it, all right?
Well, the combination of heat and the exertion that they have to perform in doing their job usually cause a drop in blood pressure, and usually heat exhaustion just comes on very suddenly, and without hardly any warning they start feeling dizzy. They may or may not faint. They become very nauseated, may vomit, headache, but the primary symptom is just profound weakness. It just hits all of a sudden without warning.
Although precautions are taken, in this line of work it's very difficult.
Well, the primary thing is taking breaks to get out of the heat and cool off. Of course, that's real difficult for firemen because of their duty requires that they continue on the job.
Residents with garden hoses attempted to relieve some of the problem. Some firemen required a trip to the hospital as a result of the temperature and smoke, just 2 more dangers in an already hazardous occupation. I'm Lori Gordon, News Tab.
Bob, you may hear the noise of the fire truck passing by us here. The personnel was one of the problems that firefighters had to face this afternoon. There was a lot of heat, a lot of wind, a lot of elements to deal with, and a lot of people it took to do it. News Tab's John Thomas talked with the fire chief about how they handled it.
Fires of this magnitude taxed the personnel supply of the Abilene Fire Department. It didn't take long after today's fires for the emergency procedures to go into effect.
We leave that up to the district chief in charge of suppression. When he feels like that the amount of calls is overloading our system, where we don't have sufficient units available for another call, then he has the discretion to start calling up people. In this instance today, when I think we had 14 units out of service at one time, we immediately started calling. We called in 8 off-duty people to go to the fire to relieve the guys out there because they'd already had about 2 hours or better of fighting the fire at that time, and then we called in 4 more to man reserve pumper.
With conditions expected to remain ripe for fires, Chief Edwards says citizens can help.
Don't burn any trash. Outdoor burning in this wind, it'll blow it right out of anything you got. Don't burn any grass or leaves. Of course, that's illegal. Shooting fireworks is illegal too, but they still do it. But we would ask them to be, help us out a little bit and just refrain from doing this until we get a little rain anyway.
I'm John Thomas, News Tab.
And of course, Bob, it could have been a whole lot worse. The cleanup is beginning to get underway in full force right now, and we're hoping that the flames aren't going to start up again, that the cleanup will be the last of it for this evening.
All right, Diane, thank you. We'll be back to you and Joel in just a few moments. As many of the city's firefighters work to extinguish those fires, 8 Fire Academy graduates formally accepted their commissions as fire medics. The new graduates have completed 16 weeks of intense training and education to become professional firefighters. 7 of the graduates will join the Abilene Fire Department. The 8th man will be a professional firefighter in the community of Cisco in Eastland County. State regulations require that these men do 72 hours before being assigned to a fire station in the city for duty. Training officials say the new firemen are well trained and anxious to begin their firefighting careers. although that may not necessarily be true if they see what their compatriots went through this afternoon. Joel and Diane, it was a potentially dangerous situation out there this afternoon.
It was very dangerous. In fact, we were wondering at one point whether those new cadets wouldn't be brought right out here to fight the fires again. Joel, as we said, has been here all afternoon and in the trenches, back from the firefighters to stay out of their way, but in the trenches nonetheless. And you're a little bit worse for the wear this afternoon, you and Kevin Palovic, who've been shooting the video out here.
People keep telling me that. I haven't looked to see. I am impressed, though. The firefighters have been very dedicated and intense in their work, and obviously, as we heard, some of them are a little worse for wear as a result of that.
Tell me about the feeling in the neighborhood. There were a lot of people getting involved. They weren't just leaving their homes, they were helping out.
Oh, I'd call it a team effort. They were all up and down this alley where we just were a moment ago with water hoses. In fact, someone handed me a water hose, and I was, for a few minutes, spraying down a fence and some grass. The grass is real thick in these alleys, and that was one of the major concerns, is that it would light up. So neighbors were out here knocking on doors, making sure that no one was home that didn't want to be. And that was especially as the smoke got thicker. So it was definitely a team effort. In fact, some people from across the street and down the street got in on it, too.
And once again, the ice cream truck passed by here again, as we were talking to you a few minutes ago. So things are beginning to return to normal, and people are out in their yards and beginning to clean up a little bit. And it's looking like it might be okay, Bob.
All right, folks, thank you very much. Some very dramatic video there. In other news tonight, a Brownwood woman has lost her arm in an accident at the 3M plant. A spokesman for 3M said 19-year-old Angela Smith got her hand tangled in some machinery and her arm was pulled into the equipment. Her right arm could not be saved. Smith is in serious condition this evening at Parkland Hospital in Dallas. The accident happened yesterday. This week's most wanted fugitive is wanted for violating the terms of his parole. 30-year-old Jesus Madrigal Ramos is named on an arrest warrant for parole revocation. Ramos was convicted of several property crimes, including burglary, and car theft. Ramos is 5 feet 8 inches tall. He weighs about 180 pounds. If you know where Jesus or Chief Ramos is, please contact local law enforcement officials. Downtown Abilene is in the process of being resurrected after years of lying near death when retailers moved away. Today, NewsTab's Janice Cochran reports on further efforts to make the Central District the jewel in Abilene's crop.
Hope you'll go for it. New plans for new life in downtown Abilene pleased the City Council today. Further sprucing up of North 1st from Treadaway to Cypress and Cypress up to North 6th ties together recent improvements in that area.
It really has changed the focus of what had been strictly a retail on Commerce Street when it was viable to something now that is really a mixed district of culture, retail, and hopefully at some point residential.
The proposed plan calls for the further development of Everman Park by the old T&P depot, as well as the extension of North 1st Street all the way to the old traffic circle and the development of the area you see behind me as a park. The Martin Luther King Bridge would be the front door to downtown, and Cypress Street would be made two-way and more pedestrian-friendly with benches, artwork, and trees.
The downtown represents the heart of the community. When we have something like the Civic Center that brings tens of thousands of people from outside the community into the downtown, you want to have and leave them with as good an impression as you can. We're now seeing theaters and restaurants coming in, and what we'd like is a very pleasant environment.
Miller likens it economically to the rebirth of the formerly abandoned West End in Dallas.
It's gone from a district that contributed nothing to the tax base to something that is a big contributor to the tax base. So from a strictly dollars and cents standpoint, these types of redevelopments, if they're properly implemented, can have a big impact.
Cost estimates for the project are $750,000 coming from a variety of sources.
We have funds available through the tax increment program to do a good portion of Cypress Street. There are other opportunities using federal funds and then using the tax increment as matching so we can stretch our local funds.
If all the entities concerned approve of the plans, work could begin as soon as January 1994. Janice Cochran, NewsTab.
I'll tell you, that wind was obviously a factor in the fire this afternoon. I drove through the area and was out taking some video, and that smoke was really stiff as it drifted across the area.
We've been harping about the dry situation since before the 4th of July.
Right.
Maybe they'll listen now after 2 major fires, because the situation is going to be worse before it gets better. There's only a 20% chance of any precipitation in the forecast on Saturday, and 20% just isn't enough to do us any good. We'll talk about our weather after this.
My grandpa